When a small team approaches a big project, I believe some elements of gameplay should probably be cut to create a more centralized or straightforward player experience. Sadly, that just wasn't the case for Souls of Chronos, which attempts to introduce all of its systems at once without providing a moment for the player to catch their breath or understand what the hell is going on. However, for a cute chibi RPG, it still provides some moments of brief entertainment. Souls of Chronos borrows from the tabletop RPG genre, where players develop their character through dialogue and stat points that open up new routes and branching paths. However, it doesn't explain this in the opening moments of gameplay, as you're introduced to Sid, a gangster out to collect a debt, when his life flashes before his eyes and his friend Tori appears to save him. Tori is a Chronos, a powerful being in this post-apocalyptic world that aids Sid on his journey. Although the two have a history together, their relationship develops over short dialogue scenes where Sid can interact with her as they're out on an adventure. This also improves Sid's stats depending on his response. Thankfully, the game tells you which stat is being increased because having a high enough stat will allow you to make specific choices during dialogue scenes. Following a murder, the two characters find themselves taking on jobs and encountering a colorful cast of characters as they make their way from dungeon to dungeon completing tasks. The story is actually the highlight of the adventure, but it's delivered in segments as you complete quests. Although the main campaign can be completed in around 10 hours with an optional ending intact, multiple side missions can be leisurely taken on. If you're able to follow the story, you're in for a creative narrative, but some areas were likely lost in translation. The conversation feels like there was no QA going into the localization, which makes some conversations feel dry, and it also makes it difficult to actually follow along. It doesn't help that the autoplay speed moves the dialogue so fast as it's finished, and without any recorded audio, you're forced to read all the text, which is needed to know exactly where to go next. Thankfully, quests are organized well, even though the text doesn't always fit in the boxes. A general idea of where to go is provided, but I did end up lost and clueless about how to progress a few times, only to figure out that I just had to talk to a character sitting in some house. I should say knowing each of the characters by name and where they're located is beneficial because sometimes the quest will say, bring X item to this character. As for navigation, getting around town is extremely slow. Either a run option or fast travel option would have improved this experience. This extends into simple interactions, which sometimes don't work unless you're positioned in a precise spot. Further, moving from one area to the next is made slower due to how you have to hold a button to proceed. Additionally, for many conversations, you have to leave conversation in order to exit dialogue, even if it's the only choice available. I just felt like it was overkill at that point. Dungeons are maze-like areas where players can explore various themed maps while facing off against grunt-like enemies and picking up materials. Materials are used to upgrade weapons and craft specific items, but many can be purchased as well. Although there are multiple weapons, I never found a reason to switch from the default shotgun, especially after a few upgrades. Gameplay and encounters are pretty hectic. For the most part, they are messy and unorganized. As enemies run around, you're at the whim of an auto-aim that points to the nearest enemy. While it works well, it's tough to see what's going on because everything overlaps. There is a dodge, but it is a challenge to read enemy telegraphs when you lose sight of Sid and Tori throughout the insane fights. While you control Sid, Tori acts as a partner with a few notable abilities. After a gauge is filled, she can trigger a time stop ability that causes some high damage. Further, she provides needed support, but that doesn't stop large enemy groups from overwhelming you. To mitigate this, there's a bomb attack, but its case requires some planning and strategy in order to time well. In later areas of the game, you'll start to understand how to utilize elemental properties in order to freeze and poison enemies, which is needed because it gets tough to grind levels when enemies take a while to respawn. Regardless, the difficulty is decently balanced, but if you die, prepare to be sent back to the most recent autosave, which is never outside of the boss room, or a dungeon for that matter. The developers did provide a few needed save areas though, following an update, which definitely helped. In terms of presentation, Souls of Chronos almost resembles a mobile game. The town areas aren't easy to navigate, but they contain quite a few NPCs to speak with. A day and night cycle is needed for some questline, but this feature almost gets in the way because you have to go back to your tavern and rest anytime you want to change the time. I'd also like to note that the character illustrations are almost too good in this game, with every character having a standout design for conversations, which luckily most of the game is. Given that there aren't any voiced audio lines, you will hear the game's music over everything at all times. There are different tracks, but I opted to turn it down and put on an anime or watch Community for the millionth time because the busy work in this game is real. Souls of Chronos is in desperate need of quality updates, however the core of its RPG tabletop narrative design is the highlight of this adventure. Still, the entire gameplay experience becomes a chore, and you'll find it hard to care during the late game plot twists because you'll likely stop reading hours before the credits rolls. Hopefully the developers refocus on what they do well, which happens to be storytelling. You know, drop the action and give us a murder mystery visual novel. I'm sure many of us will be okay with that. Noisy Pixel is giving Souls of Chronos a 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Please read the full review at noisypixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to deliver news, reviews, previews, and more. Please subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.